Hey guys, and welcome to a battle featuring Dacta leading the forces of the Wood Elves on Eschen up against El Tiburon and the Empire forces. I'm a little bit suspicious El Tiburon may be chief. Always when I see the triple Bs, I think it's possibly him, but who knows? So here we go, and it looks like it is going to be a very traditional Wood Elf playstyle. We have the triple Waywatchers, the bane of many players' kind of life, I suppose, as they tend to assassinate lords and heroes and elite troops with deadly efficiency. Certainly the best archers in the game, but you know, with the DLC coming out, we maybe see these guys a little bit less, so it's good to get the action in while we can. In the secondary line, we do have Wild Riders with shields dotted all the way along, as well as a unit of Sisters of Thorn, one of my favourite units, simply because they come with the Curse as well as Shield of Thorns for great map-wide control. Pretty good skirmishers all round, and with that physical resistance they do indeed come with. A quick look of 40%, they're actually relatively tanky, at least for light cavalry. In the main battle line, we do have triple Dryads, flanked either side by some Eternal Guard with shield, and a cheap and cheerful Spellsling in the back with a simple Earth Blood. For leadership, we do have a Glade Lady coming in with the Prey of an Arthrama and an Arrows of Kurnos, as well as a Waystalker, of course, coming in with the Arrows of Kurnos as well, trying to snipe out artillery pieces and the like. So a pretty standard and typical Wood Elf build. Certainly going to be hard to pull off though. An absolute ton of micro is going to be needed, so Dacta will have to be on top of his game here. Now for the forces of the Empire, we do have some mortars. It looks like triple mortar in fact, which I quite like a lot. I mean, it's good at taking down archers, good at taking down the rather squishy high elves, and having three of them as well makes it pretty tough for the Arrows of Kurnos to take them down over the length of the whole game without them at least getting some value. Up front, we do have a ton of basic spearmen with shields. These guys are just simply there to hold the line, take archer fire, and allow the rest of the build to actually kind of deal the damage. Now, if we look at some of the more damage dealing units, we do have swordsmen dotted around in the secondary line, but it's mainly going to be the cavalry at play. We have Empire Knights dotted all through the back lines, as well as some Pistoliers as well in this centre pocket. So Knights on either flank, Pistoliers in the centre. We do have Volkmar the Grim, certainly the best choice in this matchup in my opinion. He's incredibly tanky, he comes with banishment as well, which is always pretty handy. And he of course has Jade Griffin, giving him that regeneration. He's unbreakable, he runs over the elves with deadly efficiency, so should be some good stuff. We also have an Amber Wizard coming in with Wyson Wild Form, as well as the Manticore Summon, which is a pretty cool tool set, as well as a Empire Captain just to encourage the lads. So without further ado, let's get this battle underway. So the second Arrows of Kurnos does come in. It is focusing down the mortar once more, but it looks like it didn't kill a second artillery piece. So these guys still have two mortars left active after two Arrows of Kurnos. So that's not too bad for the Empire. Although it does look like the Waywatchers are going to unleash a volley, but for some reason were horrifically inaccurate, which is very unlike them, as most of the shots do actually come up a little bit short there. And of course, every wave of arrows which is unleashed is quite important here. Looks like they are going to focus down at the Empire Captain this time, connecting a bit better with him, doing some pretty good burst damage out of the gate. Looks like he lost about a quarter of his health. However, mortars are now raining in, but good duking back and forth from Dacta. It is pretty hard to dodge mortar fire as they're pretty inaccurate, so sometimes dodging you actually wander into the shots, but oof, a nasty connection there. However, Waywatchers do have that lovely spread out formation, so they won't take as much damage as other troops would in such a situation. Looks like they are going to be falling back now, and actually Dacta's going to be pushing forward with his cavalry and really organising his main battle line here. And through the fire and the flames, the Wild Riders go through those explosions. Looks like they're going to be trying to get a nice free charge in the front. However, it looks like the Spearmen are braced here, so they're not going to take too much damage, you wouldn't think, but they are pretty squishy. And in come the Wild Riders as the Spearmen hold the line bravely. And they did some free damage, didn't take any damage in return, so I guess it is a bonus. Waywatchers are being pummeled now by the mortar crews, and they've managed to do some pretty decent damage to the Pistoliers, and are now trying to focus down at the Empire Knights, which isn't a terrible target either. As you can see, the Empire forces are pretty kind of thinly stretched all along the line, trying to cover as much ground as possible to protect those mortars. But this is allowing the Wild Riders to come in with a lovely charge in the front here. Spearmen almost breaking here, down below half health, and the Wild Riders are not touched at all. Really good micromanagement of those guys so far. It looks like a prayer of enough armor has gone down on Volkmar the Grim as the Waywatchers unleash hell upon him. And even with all his resistances here, he does come in with, I don't need magic resistance, I suppose. But even with his regeneration and his quite high armor of 100, he's getting absolutely obliterated here. But you need to make sure you kind of do the damage and make him pay, because of course he is going to regenerate a lot of this. So you want to try and punish him as much as possible and preferably finish him off in one go. Looks like the Wood Elves are going to be pushing forward, realising that their tactic is, reaping some benefits, but nothing too insane so far. Lovely priority, though, switch there. So he was attacking Volkmar. That leaves the Empire player thinking that the next volley is going to go into him once more. Instead, he switches target onto the Knights. They don't have time to move away, and he gets some pretty decent damage off them. Dryads are moving forward and moving back as well, kind of half wanting the engagement, but also very wary of these Empire Knights on the right-hand flank. Looks like the Glade Lady has floated out this side as well, and is launching some bow shots just into some poor spearmen, doing some pretty good damage out of the gate, as the mortars continue to rain fire down, but not doing too much apart from to the Waywatchers so far. Wild Riders once again slam into the front line, but good play by both players here. Looks like the Spearmen were all braced, but they take some damage, but at the same time they at least push back the Wild Riders for now, whilst the Waywatchers do not get on top of the best targets, as most of them are falling back. But Pistoliers taking quite a bit of damage here. Looks like we are going to see an Earthblood coming down on the way, which is not a bad idea, as a mortar shot does actually rain into them now. Mortars tend to do quite a lot of HP damage as well, rather than killing models like a cannon would. Wild Warriors do charge into the front, running over Spearmen, doing some pretty good work, and Spearmen in the centre pocket have had to fall back as well. But you can see Volkmar is starting to catch up towards full health again, despite taking a few kind of volleys earlier, especially with the play of enough armor active. Waywatchers still taking an absolute pounding, but as you can see, Mortars 0 kills here. We have 9 kills here and 7 kills here, so even if they do a lot of HP damage, that isn't going to stop the damage output of the Waywatchers over here. So Wild Riders do manage to catch the Empire Knights with the help of the Curse as well, slowing these guys down and lowering their melee attack, and that's certainly going to allow these guys to punish the Empire Knights. At this point, the other Knights should have been a little bit closer, I think, to kind of hammer home and punish the Wood Elves for allowing their cavalry to go kind of so far and roam into enemy lines. Empire Knights will probably rally here, but a lot of damage was done to them, as another arrow of Kurnos arcs up into the sky and does pin into the mortar, killing a whole model, which is pretty useful, as the Waywatchers now unleash hell once more. Looks like they're really trying to punch the Knights and mortar crews, which is a good priority here. Wild Riders can cycle charge Spearmen and Swordsmen to death, so as long as you get rid of the other targets, you're in a pretty good situation. Waystalker is chilling by himself over here, could be a target of the Empire Knights, but Waywatcher Fire is popping up and over, doing some pretty good damage. Although it looks like the second half of the volley did kind of come up a bit short, as a good micro by the Empire player there, just to whip him turn around and back up out of the arc of fire. So now you can see the Wood Elves have situated themselves on top of the hill, kind of rotating around from their deployment zone to try and get a bit of a downhill charge. The Empire are having none of it, kind of falling back here, and there's a pretty long extended skirmish phase here, which is always good to see. It looks like Wild Riders once again are going to burst forward and perhaps try and hammer down at the Swordsman, although Volkmar the Grim is here, and he's still going to be a big problem. He's basically up to full health now. However, the mortar crews are pretty much decimated, and a lot of the Empire Knights have taken an absolute hammering. Wood Elves are going to be falling back as the Swordsmen do push in, trying to lure them into the high ground where they can charge down with the Wild Riders and really punish them. But good kind of discipline, I suppose, so far by the Empire. They've not really been caught out too many times, apart from with one unit of Empire Knights, and you can see the Waywatchers are pretty low on ammunition now, down to about a quarter left, and there's still a very angry Volkmar, Empire Captain, and kind of dotted Empire Knights around, who they really want to kind of try and finish off at this point. You'll see balance of power is a tiny bit in the Wood Elf favour, but every time they loose a volley and it doesn't get good value, that's actually going to dip back down to the middle. You see a lot of those Waywatchers actually missed their shots there as the Empire Knights are once again pulled back, and now the Wood Elf forces are a bit kind of tighter together. The mortars may well do a little bit more damage. And the other arrows of Kurnos does come in, and it looks like it may have taken out the last mortar. No, there is one left, even though this crew is wavering pretty hard now. But we still have 3 mortars in the back here, Only 4 kills though, these guys not really paid for themselves, but they put on some pretty good pressure. One unit of Spearmen does get charged by the Wild Riders, and Dryads are starting to move in now. I really like the Dryad pick. They'll tear apart state troops with deadly efficiency. Empire Knights, though, are going to counter-charge in the main line into the Dryads. Will do some nice shock damage, although it does look like Wild Riders are now bouncing as well. So charges coming up from both sides as the Weight Watchers continue to rain fire down. Empire Knights on this flank as well, nearly getting caught by Wild Riders, instead jumping in on top of the Glade Lord and Dryads here. Nice Earthblood has come down as the Weight Watchers now focus down at some Pistoliers, rather interestingly, and pretty much decimate them with one volley. But these guys are running very low now. It's, let's see how much ammunition. We've got like 2 ammunition on this one, 4 on this one, so yeah, it's really getting down to the dregs. Dryads are starting to cut their way through Swordsmen here. We do have the Manticore summon coming down by the Empire. Lovely prey of enough rain that come down on the Empire Knights as their backs are turned as well. And the Weight Watchers now are pretty much decimating these guys down to just 1,000 health. And they're probably going to break in just a second. Looks like the Manticore is being used to hunt down Wild Riders. Certainly not a bad idea. Wild Riders are rather squishy, and this is allowing Volkmar up on the high ground to quite comfortably deal with the Eternal Guard. He can continue to roll through them. He's only been in combat a little while, already up to 30 kills. Dryads have a push through in the centre pocket, but they are struggling elsewhere where they're not kind of being as supported. The Weight Watchers loose an arrow into the Pistoliers, doing some pretty decent damage, which is good because these guys have quite a lot of ammunition left and can have the potential to skirmish in the late game here. Eternal Guard on this flank will be crumpling pretty soon. Swordsman and with Volkmar support is a very dangerous threat indeed. As you can see, the last arrow is being let go here. How's that? No, this unit has 1 volley left, but all the other Weight Watchers are out of ammo. However, if your Weight Watchers have used up all their ammunition, you know they've had a probably pretty good day of it so far. Sisters of Thorn and Wild Riders do bundle in to the Spearmen on this flank, although there is some mortar fire putting pressure onto this big mobile blob, and the Spearmen are going to be a little bit of a pain. Very good up against the Wild Riders and their light armour. They don't need so much AP. However, Dryads and Eternal Guard can go toe-to-toe with them rather effectively. Looks like the last volley is going to be a little bit wasted here into Spearmen, who do have White and Wildthorn popped on them. Looks like it was in fact an overcast area effectively, which is pretty good. Plus 30 armour and 30% base weapon damage is certainly nothing to scoff at. A banishment does go down, but a little bit mistimed, I think. Didn't manage to catch anyone too much. Weight Watchers are now starting to push in. It could well end up being Volkmar versus the world here. With no Weight Watchers to take him out, he is going to cause quite a lot of problems. In the back line, the Glade Lady is tussling with some Empire Knights, and she's still a Lord. Yes, she's kind of more meant for long-range firepower, but she can still hold her own up against a few meagre humans here. We do have a lovely prey of enough armour in the back lines, this time to pin in troops so they can be charged, allowing the Wild Riders to catch the Pistoliers and put them to bed. Looks like the mortars are out of ammunition at this point. Swordsmen as well need to come back to the fray, but it's a very scrappy game so far. The early discipline of the Empire is really starting to pay off at this point, as they're kind of decimating a lot of the ground troops. And it looks like Dacta is pulling back his Weight Watchers just so they don't get stomped and help push the balance of power more in his opponent's favour. Over in the distance here, we do have a few units of Wood Elves who could come back, but as well as some Swordsmen as well. And it looks like Swordsmen are going to be engaging with Weight Watchers in glorious combat. And they're still Elves, so their melee stats aren't terrible. They've got okay ones, but they are rather squishy. So Volkmar is considering coming over and having some fun as well. One saving grace at this point for Dacta is the Wild Riders, and considering he got rid of all the cavalry with his Weight Watchers, who Wild Riders will beat Empire Knights, but they do struggle if they haven't got the charge in, and they're certainly being outnumbered as well. They can really struggle. So these guys are going to be a menace in the night now that there is no knights left available. And there are lots of kind of mobile pressure coming in from the Wood Elves, bouncing between combats, trying to not let Volkmar get a grips of them. And you can see they're actually very spread out in this small formation, just kind of darting around, hitting them from all angles as the Empire try and consolidate their forces into a central power of strength. I believe we still have one Manticore summon left as well, and the Glade Lady is very squishy, so perhaps if he can snipe out the Glade Lady and then allow the Terracors and Volkmar to reign supreme, it could be a pretty tough fight still for the Wood Elves, who are getting a nice surround here, I suppose, in the midpoint of the game. And in comes the Dryads and Way Watchers for glorious combat. He's going to try and force the Empire player to commit here. All their backs will be turned, and then the Wild Riders will swing in from all sides and kind of tighten the noose, as it were. Volkmar is here though, going to be riding through all these guys, and a big Earthblood does come down, but in comes the last Manticore summon. Going to be interesting to see who the Empire player does push it after. No doubt it's going to be the Spellsinger of Life or the Glade Lady. It looks like a lot of the Wild Riders are trying to pull out at this point. We've had some really good cycle charging so far. And it looks like the Manticore's taken no time here, instantly going in on top of the Glade Lady, and she is going to suffer unless she gets out of there incredibly quickly. A Feral Manticore is certainly nothing to scoff at, and you can see her health start to dip quite low. The Wild Riders once again swinging about and coming back in here, routing the Spearmen, and that's what the Wood Elf player really wants at this point, is to rout the Empire troops, where he can then chase them off the field with his added mobility. Looks like the Manticore didn't quite get to feast on the Glade Lady for good, but he is swooping back in once more on top of the Wild Riders this time, trying to aid the Empire Captain, who's not having the greatest day of his life, kind of being stuck amongst a load of Wild Riders, although he's standing on his feet, sword in hand, so not all is lost. We have a fat banishment coming down, unfortunately nuking some Spearmen, but also doing decent work to the Dryads, Way Watchers and Eternal Guard, who were dotted about. And we basically have the Empire kind of character core up against the rest of the Wood Elves here. Balance of power is in favour of the Empire as it stands, however, as Volkmar is still going pretty strong. The Waystalker is forced off it, and so is the Glade Lady, running for the hills as she is terrified, but she should be able to come back here. Wild Riders are starting to waver as well in the late game, and a Wizard holding the line quite strongly here and trying to stand with his bros. Empire Captain is not doing too bad. Leadership's not terrible yet. However, it looks like the summoned Manticore has gone down now, which does move the balance of power back to more of an even footing, as Wild Riders do once again peel out of the battle. Well, they are pretty beat up at this point, some of them bouncing over to try and finish off the swordsmen, who are chevroned up. Empire Captain is going to go stack on Volkmar, who's trying his best to survive here. He is down to just 500 health, and he's used all his regeneration, which is a good sign for him really, because it means he's been putting in work. However, it's getting quite danger low, trying to go toe-to-toe with the Glade Lady. He has managed to force off the Waystalker once more, but down to just 57 health. I think the Glade Lady is going to be able to win the Duel of Jewels here. The Empire Captain has jumped in, trying to finish her off, but down goes Volkmar, as the Glade Lady still has over 1,000 health. And I think with the kind of backbone of all good Empire forces is gone down, I feel like that game is probably going to be game. Balance power does swing heavily now back in favour of the Wood Elves. Real topsy-turvy game all round, and it looks like their forces are going to break off and run for the hills. What a crazy game. Very well played to both of these players, and real good kind of traditional Wood Elf play with the Way Watchers, but at the same time fantastic kind of style of play as well from the Empire, trying to wait out the ammunition. In the end, didn't quite work because he lost too many of his Empire Knights, so perhaps going a little bit more aggressive and kind of putting your foot to the floor, driving forwards, forcing the Waystalkers, or Way Watchers, sorry, to target units they don't want to target because they're being pressured from all angles, and try to force back Dacta's forces a little bit more. But good tactics still that nearly worked, and I'm sure it's kind of worked in the past. Anyway guys, hope you did enjoy. If you did, please do consider giving the video a big old thumbs up. It really helps push it out on YouTube, and feel free to subscribe for more Total War Warhammer content if you haven't already. And yeah, awesome builds, glorious play from Dacta. I love Wood Elf play in general, and he did it masterfully here. 96 kills on a Glade Lady on a horse is very impressive stuff, and the Way Watchers for the most part managed to get on those key targets. Good priority, picking apart the knights, forcing them off, picking apart the mortars, and knowing that his forces can hopefully carry from there with very effective cycle charging, and that's just what he did. 140 and 180 kills on Wild Riders is pretty insane. Volkmar nearly managed to carry here for the Empire forces, but it wasn't to be. Anyway guys, until next time, peace, and as always, stay awesome.